The first original Exedra main story is here. So is Mifuyu, and so is the cold that I'm currently having, so I hope that you don't mind too much. I'm sorry for that. But we got the next news stream, and as always, as on clockwork, of course, here's the big news video, and we're gonna start out with the stuff that I guess we didn't really need to talk about at all, because yeah, that was a quick Twitter campaign. Get this many reposts and you get 3,000 gems. And yes, of course we got the reposts, so we're getting 3,000 gems. Not that important. However, they also told us the next link rate, and the next link rate is another rematch against the Horse Uwasa with the same weaknesses and everything. But the last time we fought against the Horse Uwasa, we didn't yet have the increased medal bonuses, so you get those again. And of course you get, as always, more stuff. So just keep doing at least your 3 daily link rate battles, even if they're on low difficulty, it doesn't matter. Generally, I will say that the link rate stuff is a system that you can put a lot of time into to get a lot of medals, but also you don't have to. You can just do 3 low difficulty battles each day to get your rewards, and you still get an absolutely great amount of stuff with a chance, of course, on 5-star keys. Very good. Then they also mentioned that the half anniversary missions are not entirely done yet, so there will be more half anniversary login bonuses, like new login bonuses for half anniversary and new checklist missions as well. But this will be the last ones. So after this, the half anniversary thing is like officially over. But like the last little bit of extra stuff that they announced during the half anniversary is about to appear. And then they moved on to the next bit, which is what the actual new stuff is actually about, the Crescent Memoria. One last thing though, they also mentioned that some alternate versions of characters, like Holy Mummy for example, I don't think they had their alternate voices in the hard file yet. But they're going to add more of those, and they mentioned that they're going to add some more of those on Monday, which is when this next patch goes live. But yeah, coming to Crescent Memoria. What actually is Crescent Memoria? Well, they talked a bit about what it actually is from a story perspective, so if you don't care too much about story, then maybe this is not going to be as interesting for you, and you can skip ahead to the Kyoku news or whatever. But more importantly, what is Crescent Memoria actually? It is a new main story chapter, which means it will have main story windows that you fight through, right? And there will be a total of 3 main story windows. And we're going to get the first one on this Monday. And the story will be about well, since the story is a prequel to Maiga Record, we will see now the story of Momoko just when she became a magical girl, as well as also the veterans. I think we're going to get you and Mifuyu. They're going to meet up with Momoko, and they're going to go to this city called Toyosuru City, which is apparently like a completely new city that is south of Kamihama somewhere. They can just make up new cities, which is something that they have been doing for like the past, well, since Madoka Mágica existed. Every single time a spin-off comes along, they say, oh, this spin-off takes place in its own city, its own new city, which is just over there from all the other cities that we've already seen so far. So yeah, they're just going to continue doing that, saying like, oh yeah, that's like a completely different new city also. It's like just next to Kamihama. There's like 8 or 9 different cities or whatever currently in the Madoka universe, and they're like all of those 9 cities are like just seconds and minutes away from each other. But yeah, so apparently we're going to go to this new city, and we're going to meet Sumire, one of the 2 new characters, which is the one on the left here. And Sumire is not yet a magical girl, and because she's trying to find a wish that allows her to save a certain someone. They're being coy about what she actually is trying to do, but that's for the story to tell you, of course. But because she's not a magical girl yet, she still finds out about magical girls apparently, and tags along as the human character, similar to Sayaka and Madoka in the anime, where they were, you know, still humans, but were like trying to figure out what they could wish for. And this is going to be somewhat similar with Sumire and the team Yachio basically in this. And since this is going to take place, at least mostly take place in Toyosuri City, that means they don't have to heal these characters. They could just survive. They could also add a bunch more characters later on, like maybe not right now, but maybe at some later point in the future. They could say, here's some more events and stories that take place in Toyosuri City. And of course, we're going to have new characters as well. Awesome. So there's a lot of things that they can do with this, but for now, we're going to get 1 new character with this part 1. And with the other 2 characters that we know we're gonna get, they might be for part 2 and 3, but they might also put in more characters in between each part. For example, there are still a lot of Maiga Record characters that are missing that were in Arc 1. For example, we have Kanae, we have Kanagi, we have Ikumi. There's like a lot of 4-star characters as well that they could be adding. So they have a lot of time now with all of this Crescent Memoria stuff to keep adding more Magio Record stuff back into the game that we were supposed to be getting during Arc 1, including bosses and witches. But they also mentioned they're going to get some new 3D cutscenes, apparently. But yeah, coming to witches, they showed a silhouette, which is basically the silhouette of Candy, which is the bunny-eared witch, as you can see right here. So yeah, the first new boss that we're going to be fighting in 3D will be Candy, the bunny-eared witch, who has, of course, her own familiars, and when she attacks, she gets kind of scary. And yeah, that's basically what we're going to be seeing at first. There are a whole bunch of other Magio Record witches that we haven't seen in the game yet. For example, there's Rebecca, there's Teresa. We have actually seen Paola so far. There's also a whole bunch of Uwasa we haven't seen yet, but since this is a prequel, they can't put those Uwasa in the prequel. But generally, there's a lot of bosses that we haven't seen yet in Exedra at all. There's like a grand total of like 9 or 10 witches that were part of Magio Record Arc 1. And we've seen like 2 so far, right? Sandbox Witch, Zenobia, and Paola, the Rubber Witch. And now it's going to be Candy, the Bunny-eared Witch. And then they can add a whole bunch more for the other windows and for other side content. So yeah, I think they're really going to use Crescent Memoria now with the next 2 parts after this as well to get a whole bunch of that Magio Record content that we've been missing into the game. Awesome. And one of those things they're going to get into the game now from Magio Record that has been a bit missing is right here. It's Mifuyu. So yeah, we thought we were going to get Mifuyu way earlier, but apparently she was found drunk in a ditch, and now she's back on stage, sober this time. And what is she actually like as a character? Some people have been saying, oh, she could be a Void debuffer, or Void healer, or Void something. Some other people said, oh, she could be Dark something, maybe Dark debuffer, maybe Dark, whatever. The thing is, even when people guess healer, breaker, defender, whatever, any character could be a breaker. Like, we gotta keep this in mind, because breaker is something that isn't really well defined. Like, oh, you know, a defender is someone who, of course, defends the team, so they're like a tank. A healer is obviously someone who heals the team. But a breaker, anyone could be a breaker, right? Because what does breaking mean? Well, breaking just means you punch someone really hard. Like, okay, everyone can do that, right? Everyone can just attack with their weapon in such a way that, like, breaks enemy defenses, for example, or something like that. So yeah, she's a breaker. And I can tell you she's a single target focused breaker of dark element. So she could be either Void or Dark, both fits. And what she does, I'm just going to give you the great quick rundown, because of course I'm going to try to roll for her, and then I'm going to make a video on her. But I can tell you right now that she is, as I mentioned, single target focused, but also crit focused. Okay, and the way she works is that she applies, on one hand, for herself, a curse on the enemy. So this is what Hana did, by the way. Before, every single character that applied ailments had their own ailment, right? There were no 2 characters that applied poison. There were no 2 characters that applied weakness, for example. Every ailment was only applied by a single character. And this is now the first time that a character applies an ailment that someone else also applies. Like, Hana also applies curse, right? And she's now the second character in the game, or the first character in the game that now applies a curse also, next to Hana. Amazing. And the curse itself doesn't really matter that much, it doesn't do much damage. What's more important is the fact that this curse triggers a passive which says increases crit chance against cursed enemies, right? So you apply curse to the enemy and then you crit against this enemy a lot more often. Now, why do you want to crit against an enemy? I'm gonna get to that in a second, but next up, she also applies a debuff with her skill that makes the enemy take more crits. In fact, they get, like, you get basically 15% crit chance if you attack an enemy with this debuff on them, right? So not only does she herself crit more often, she also makes everyone crit more often against the target. Okay, so why do you need crits? Why do you need crits? Well, she gains bonus magic power and MP, so magic stacks, and MP whenever she or anyone else crits. Oh, so you want to crit as much as possible so you get as much MP and magic stacks as possible. Amazing. So what does magic stacks do, and is your special even good? Well, magic stacks make her special have more break gauge depletion, and also have it give more break bonus. Break bonus is how fast the percentage increases once an enemy is broken. So basically it makes your special really, really strong if you have a lot of magic. You also gain magic from attacking with, like, your skill and your normal attack. Not that important. Mostly you'll gain your magic stacks from just someone on the team critting. So hopefully you will have your maximum of 10 magic stacks whenever you use your special move, Assault Paranoia. And then, of course, this special will do a crap ton of break gauge depletion and also have a crap ton of break bonus if you're using it when the enemy is already broken. So it makes it really, really powerful. So everyone wants to crit, not only so that they deal more damage, but that they also give more MP and more magic to Mifuyu, so Mifuyu can now do as many specials as possible, and every single one of those specials is going to be extremely powerful. Very simple game plan, just crit, 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 big special, crit, 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 big special, etc, etc. That's basically the idea behind her. She has some small bonuses like, oh, she gains 20% increased turn order whenever she specials, like small stuff, doesn't really matter that much. More importantly though, she has an interesting support Kyoku ability as well, which is 20% speed. Every breaker wants speed, so already we're looking at a pretty good passive, but then on top of that, increases breakage reduction when a critical hit occurs. That is Iroha's passive. So Iroha's passive, in case you don't know, is when Iroha crits, she gains a buff for like 2 turns that makes her have bonus break gauge reduction for quite a bit actually, like quite a high amount of break gauge reduction whenever she crits. So if Iroha, you want to crit as much as possible, so that you can keep this buff up. It doesn't mean that the crit itself like does more break, like you don't get critical break or something like that, but rather critting just gives you a buff, and then the buff makes you have more break gauge reduction, right? So by critting often, you keep this buff up and keep this buff active, and you can basically give this now to anyone with your new support Kyoko, so you can give this to any breaker. And I don't know if giving this to Iroha makes her have 2 buffs at once, right? Can you have both buff active at once, or do they override each other? I would assume they would both be active, so you would basically improve Iroha's passive with this, interesting enough. But you can now give this to anyone, so every breaker can now get this passive, although we don't know, of course, how strong this is, because this bonus could be really, really small. We don't know. We have to wait until it releases, and we can sort of take a look at the actual numbers, because this number could be very low, and then it would actually be kind of bad. She also has an EX, which gives her more crit rate, which means that's easier for herself to trigger her bonuses. But very, very nicely on top of that, she also now gains an additional break gauge reduction buff whenever she crits. So basically what she just gives to someone else with her support Kyoku, she can also give to herself with her EX, where she now gains, like I said, every time you crit, you get this buff for a short time that gives you more break gauge reduction. So if you crit every single turn, if you crit every single attack, the buff will have 100% uptime. And while this buff is active, you have, of course, more break gauge reduction. And it seems to be quite powerful, because I think in the preview they showed she had a lot of break gauge reduction, like more than she should have had. And that might have been from this buff, I'm not quite sure. And of course, you also get bonus, break bonus, awesome. So once again, another character that really, really wants to use their EX because it's looking really, really good. And then her A2 just makes her debuff from her skill last longer, which I don't think does anything, because she's a breaker and you kind of want her to use her skill every single turn anyway, because your skill does a lot more break gauge reduction than your normal attack. And if you're using your skill every single turn, then what does it matter if the debuff lasts an extra turn? You're just gonna have 100% uptime anyway. Kind of weird. But then on top of that, whenever she uses her skill, 30% speed. So basically also, since using it every turn, that means 30% speed at all times, and 30% speed at all times. That's pretty darn good. So that's the actual good part of her A2. But overall, a pretty decent A2, but nothing groundbreaking or anything, meaning that, yeah, you don't have to invest too much into her Ascensions. So yeah, she looks pretty nice. Although attackers, when they gain more Ascensions, and they can increase their special level gives more break gauge reduction. So Ascensions are really important for breakers anyway. Not for their passive bonuses, but because they can just get more levels for their special. But yeah, overall, she looks pretty decent. Even though she crits a lot, I don't think she's going to be doing that much damage because her base attack is not that high. But she's still going to do a decent amount of damage, at least, and you will see her actually hit some somewhat decent numbers sometimes, I guess, but not as much as a damage dealer or anything like that. But yeah, generally, she seems pretty nice. Her break gauge reduction that we saw on stream was really, really high, and the fact that she gives everyone 15% more crit rate is really good on any crit focused team. So if you put her next to a Sakurako, next to a Yachio, of course, she wants to hang out with her buddy Yachio. If we put her next to theoretically Iroha if you want to do a double breaker team, but also more importantly Tsuruno. Tsuruno gives crit rate to everyone and crit damage to everyone, and with before you just have more crit rate and allows you to get more crit damage by just critting more often in that sense. So a lot of teams you'll probably see like Yachio, Tsuruno, and Mifuyu in one team, or just Yachio and Mifuyu in one team. yeah, Mifuyu really wants Yachiyo back, you can kind of tell. But yeah, generally in the future, whenever you see any enemy, any boss that is dark weak, you know you can put that Mifuyu on that enemy, and all of your damage dealers will be critting more often, and they'll be very, very happy. And whenever the damage dealers crit more often, or just anyone crits more often, Mifuyu herself is more happy, so a very high amount of synergy going on there. So yeah, it looks pretty nice. So not much else to say there. That's it for the news. Like I said, they did mention that since this Curse Memoria will have 3 parts in total, I assume we're going to get, now for the future, the next 2 parts of Crest Memoria, and somewhere in the middle of that we're gonna get the last part of Scene 0. So I think these 3 big updates will be like the next big thing after that. So 0, 2 parts of Crest Memoria, which means a lot more opportunities for a lot more Manga Record content, which also means I assume that Nagisa is not gonna be that soon, because we're gonna get a lot more Manga Record stuff instead now. Maybe Nagisa could even be somewhere around Anniversary, who knows? But yeah, that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time. As always, a shout out to my members, Chai Bean, Pip van Winkel, and Simpletor. Thank you very much.